Ladies and gentlemen, beloved in faith, today I want to speak to you about a life that exemplifies unwavering trust in God, a life that embodies the power of faith to bring healing and prosperity into every corner of existence. Imagine a person whose every step, every word, every decision is anchored not in fear or doubt, but in the certainty of God's promises. This is the life of a true champion of faith, a life that inspires generations to rise above limitations and embrace the fullness of divine provision. Faith is not merely a belief, it is an active living force. It is the unseen hand that moves mountains, the quiet power that breaks chains, and the gentle whisper that calms storms. Those who cultivate faith understand that it is not measured by the size of the problem, but by the depth of trust in God's goodness. When faith is alive, miracles unfold, healing becomes reality, and hope transforms into tangible victory. Healing, both of body and soul, flows through faith. True healing begins in the heart, where fear and despair are replaced by trust and expectancy. Every ailment, every struggle, every burden finds relief when approached with the authority of prayer and the confidence that God is present. Healing is not only about removing sickness, but restoring wholeness, renewing spirit, and enabling individuals to step into their divine destiny with strength and courage. Prosperity in its truest sense is more than wealth. It is the overflow of God's blessings in every aspect of life, spiritual, relational, and material. The champion of faith knows that prosperity comes from obedience, generosity, and alignment with divine principles. It is a life where resources are multiplied, where opportunities are unveiled, and where abundance is a testimony to God's faithfulness. This prosperity is not a result of mere effort or human wisdom, but the fruit of living in partnership with the Creator, trusting that His plans are always perfect. Those who walk in faith, who pray for healing, and who pursue prosperity according to God's will, do not just live, they inspire. They become beacons of hope, demonstrating that divine power is not confined to Scripture, but alive today, manifesting in every life that dares to believe. Their legacy is one of transformation, a reminder that no challenge is too great, no setback too severe, and no dream too impossible when faith governs the heart. Let us therefore aspire to this standard, not by our own strength, but through surrender to God's power. Let our lives be marked by bold faith, fearless pursuit of healing, and unwavering expectation of prosperity that honors the Almighty. Let us rise as champions, not in name alone, but in the manifestation of God's glory. Through our every word, every act, and every day we are given faithful hearts, limitless hope, and abundant life. Await those who dare to trust fully, pray fervently, and live boldly. Step into that calling, and let the world witness the unstoppable force of a life surrendered to God's infinite power. Faith is not merely a word or a concept. It is a dynamic, living force that moves through every aspect of our lives, shaping our experiences and determining our outcomes. It is the invisible hand that guides us when circumstances seem overwhelming, the inner voice that speaks hope when the world shouts despair, and the quiet assurance that no matter how impossible a situation appears, God's power is greater than any obstacle. To live a life of faith is to step into a reality where the natural and the supernatural intersect, where what is unseen holds more weight than what is seen, and where trust in God becomes the foundation of every decision and action. True faith is measured not by the absence of problems, but by the steadfastness of one's belief in the midst of them. It is the courage to move forward when the path is unclear, the determination to hold on to God's promises even when they seem delayed, and the conviction that no setback or difficulty can separate us from the divine purpose laid out for our lives. Faith is not passive. It does not wait quietly for miracles to happen. Instead, it acts boldly, believing that God responds to those who trust Him with unwavering hearts. It is faith that empowers the believer to pray with authority, speak with confidence, and walk with assurance, knowing that the supernatural accompanies every step of obedience. Faith also creates a mindset of expectancy, where the believer anticipates God's goodness before evidence appears. This expectation is not blind optimism, but a firm reliance on God's character, His promises, and His faithfulness. Those who cultivate faith understand that doubt and fear are natural, yet they refuse to let these forces control their hearts. Instead, they anchor themselves in the certainty that God's plan is perfect and that every challenge serves a greater purpose in the unfolding of His will. Through this perspective, faith transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary testimonies of divine intervention, as miracles, breakthroughs, and blessings flow naturally to those who trust wholeheartedly. Moreover, faith is contagious. When one person lives boldly by faith, it inspires others to rise above fear and limitation. Communities, families, and nations are transformed when faith becomes the guiding principle, for it has the power to break generational cycles of doubt and despair. Faith equips the believer to face sickness with hope, financial challenges with confidence, and relational struggles with patience and love. It is a force that fuels prayer, strengthens perseverance, and unlocks opportunities that the natural mind could never conceive. In essence, faith is the heartbeat of a victorious life. It is the foundation upon which miracles are built, the anchor in storms, and the light that guides the way through darkness. A life fueled by faith is a life that refuses to be defined by circumstances, a life that embraces God's promises as living realities, and a life that moves forward with courage, knowing that what is unseen is infinitely more powerful than what is seen. Faith is not only the beginning of the journey, but the sustaining power that carries believers through every trial, every challenge, and every moment of uncertainty, ensuring that they emerge not just intact, but triumphant. Healing is one of the most profound expressions of God's power in the life of a believer. Yet it begins not merely in the body, but in the heart and spirit. True healing starts with faith, with a mind and soul that trust in God's goodness and His desire to restore. When the heart surrenders fear, doubt, and despair, it creates space for divine intervention to flow freely. Healing is more than the absence of sickness. It is a restoration of wholeness, a renewal of strength, and a rekindling of hope that empowers a person to walk confidently into the purpose for which they were created. The journey to healing often begins with the recognition that our brokenness is not hidden from God. Every pain, every ailment, and every struggle is known to Him, and His love extends to every part of our being. Faith allows the believer to approach healing with expectation, not hesitation, understanding that God's power is greater than any disease, injury, or emotional wound. When the heart believes in His promise, prayer becomes a powerful tool of restoration, and the body, mind, and spirit respond to the authority of divine intervention. Healing becomes a partnership between the believer and God, where surrender and obedience invite the miraculous into the natural realm. Healing also encompasses emotional and spiritual restoration. Often the deepest wounds are not seen but felt. Wounds of fear, guilt, disappointment, or loss. These hidden burdens can weigh heavily, affecting health, relationships, and purpose. Yet faith brings release and freedom. Through prayer, meditation on God's word, and trust in His promises, the heart is mended, emotional scars are soothed, and spiritual vitality is renewed. When the inner life is healed, the external circumstances often begin to align with God's plan. Healing becomes holistic, touching every aspect of life, creating balance, peace, and resilience in the believer. Another essential aspect of healing is persistence. Healing may not always come immediately or in the form expected, but the champion of faith continues to trust, pray, and declare God's promises. Consistent faith cultivates an atmosphere in which divine power can operate without hindrance. The believer learns that healing is often a process that teaches patience, strengthens character, and deepens reliance on God. This endurance fosters spiritual maturity, equipping the individual to not only receive healing, but also to minister it to others through encouragement, prayer, and testimony. Healing, therefore, is both a personal and communal experience. As one person experiences restoration, it becomes a testimony that inspires others to believe for their own miracles. Families, communities, and even nations are touched when faith-filled individuals demonstrate the reality of God's healing power. It transforms despair into hope, weakness into strength, and fear into boldness. Healing restores more than health. It restores purpose, vision, and a vibrant connection with the divine. Ultimately, the heart T. Hat believes in God's healing power, experiences freedom and wholeness beyond the physical. It is a heart that trusts in God's timing, honors His wisdom, and welcomes His touch in every area of life. Healing becomes a living testimony of God's love and power, a demonstration that faith can restore not only what is broken, but also what was once lost, enabling a believer to walk in strength, confidence, and divine purpose. Prosperity in its truest sense is not merely the accumulation of wealth or material possessions, but the overflow of God's blessings in every area of life. It is the natural result of living in alignment with divine principles, of walking in obedience to God, and of trusting that His provision is both sufficient and abundant. Those who understand prosperity through faith recognize that it is not earned solely through human effort, intellect, or strategy. It is the fruit of a life surrendered to God's guidance, a life in which every decision, action, and resource is directed by His wisdom. When a believer aligns with God's will, prosperity becomes inevitable, for it flows from the same source that created the heavens and the earth. Obedience is the foundation of divine prosperity. The champion of faith knows that God blesses those who honor His commandments and principles. When a person obeys God in the small and the great, in the seen and the unseen, doors open, opportunities arise, and resources multiply in ways that surpass human understanding. Prosperity is not a reward for personal ambition. It is a reflection of a life that values God above all else. This obedience cultivates favor, unlocks provision, and creates alignment with the divine flow that transforms ordinary circumstances into extraordinary outcomes. Alignment with God's purpose also ensures that prosperity is sustainable and meaningful. True prosperity is not temporary or fleeting. It is holistic, impacting spiritual, relational, and material dimensions of life. A person who pursues prosperity in alignment with God's principles experiences not only financial abundance, but also peace of mind, strength of character, and harmonious relationships. This kind of prosperity uplifts families, blesses communities, and becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness. It teaches that abundance is not measured merely by what one possesses, but by the ability to live fully, give generously, and impact others positively. Faith is a critical component in receiving prosperity. It is the confidence that God will provide, the expectancy that His timing is perfect, and the trust that He knows exactly what is best for every individual. When faith guides financial decisions, career moves, and investments of time and energy, the believer experiences God's favor in tangible ways. Prosperity becomes a living witness to the power of God's promises, showing that He cares for every need and delights in seeing His children flourish. Faith eliminates worry, transforms uncertainty into opportunity, and positions the believer to receive abundance that exceeds expectation. Generosity and stewardship are also integral to prosperity. A person who receives God's blessings is called to give, to bless others, and to multiply resources through acts of kindness and service. This cycle of giving and receiving honors God and ensures that prosperity is not hoarded but shared. When resources flow through obedience and generosity, they become a channel for God's power to impact lives beyond oneself, creating a ripple effect of abundance, hope, and transformation. Ultimately, prosperity through obedience and alignment is about partnership with God. It is a life lived in harmony with His will, a life where faith, discipline, and generosity converge to create a full, abundant existence. This prosperity, thank you, is not defined by the world but by God, reflecting His character, His provision, and His desire to bless those who trust and follow Him. It is a prosperity that sustains, empowers, and glorifies the Creator in every aspect of life. Faith is a transformative force that has the power to change lives, communities, and even entire generations. It is not merely a private conviction or a fleeting hope. It is an active, dynamic energy that shapes character, decisions, and outcomes. When a believer walks in faith, they are no longer limited by circumstances, fear, or human reasoning. Instead, they step into a reality where possibilities are expanded, obstacles are diminished, and the unseen hand of God works openly in their favor. Faith inspires transformation because it creates a foundation of trust that everything, no matter how difficult or complex, can be turned into a testimony of God's goodness. Transformation through faith begins within the individual. The mind, heart, and spirit are renewed as faith replaces doubt with confidence, fear with courage, and despair with hope. This inner change is critical because it determines how one responds to life's challenges. A person who walks by faith sees opportunities where others see dead ends, finds strength where others see weakness, and experiences joy in the midst of trials where others see only suffering. Faith changes perception, and when perception is changed, actions follow. It empowers the believer to make decisions that honor God, pursue purpose relentlessly, and embrace challenges with resilience. Faith also inspires transformation in relationships and communities. A single life that reflects unwavering trust in God becomes a catalyst for change around it. Families are strengthened when faith governs attitudes and interactions. Communities are uplifted when individuals lead with courage, hope, and moral integrity. Transformation occurs not because of human effort alone, but because faith carries the authority and power of God into every interaction. When believers act from faith, they model a life of divine alignment, encouraging others to embrace similar principles of trust, perseverance, and obedience. Furthermore, faith fuels perseverance and endurance, which are essential elements of transformation. Life often presents setbacks, challenges, and unexpected trials. Without faith, these moments can lead to discouragement and stagnation. With faith, however, every difficulty becomes an opportunity for growth and revelation. Believers learn to trust in God's timing, to wait patiently for His interventions, and to act boldly in the assurance that their efforts, guided by divine wisdom, will bear fruit. Transformation is not instantaneous. It is a process that faith sustains, shaping character, refining purpose, and producing lasting results. Faith-driven transformation also manifests in tangible outcomes. Careers flourish, health is restored, relationships are strengthened, and communities prosper when individuals operate from a foundation of trust in God. Every breakthrough, every answered prayer, and every success story becomes a testimony that faith is not theoretical but practical, not abstract but lived and experienced. Transformation through faith is holistic, affecting mind, body, spirit, and environment, creating a life that reflects divine intention in every dimension. Ultimately, faith inspires transformation because it bridges the gap between what is and what could be. It turns limitation into possibility, weakness into strength, and ordinary lives into extraordinary testimonies of God's power. Those who embrace faith do not simply survive life's challenges, they thrive, overcome, and leave a legacy of change that echoes far beyond their immediate circumstances. Faith is the spark that ignites transformation, the foundation upon which miracles are built, and the driving force that leads believers into a life of victory, purpose, and lasting impact. A legacy of bold belief is the hallmark of those who live a life fully surrendered to God and anchored in unwavering faith. It is the result of a life that refuses to be constrained by fear, doubt, or the limitations of the world, choosing instead to trust fully in the promises and power of God. Bold belief is not reckless, it is deliberate, confident, and grounded in the certainty that God's plans are higher than our understanding. When a person embraces such belief, their life becomes a testimony that inspires others, leaving behind a legacy that endures far beyond their own lifetime. Those who walk in bold belief understand that faith requires courage. It is easy to follow God when circumstances are favorable, but it takes true courage to trust Him in the midst of trials, uncertainties, and opposition. Bold belief is visible in the decisions a person makes, the risks they take, and the stand they maintain, even when others doubt. It is a faith that speaks with authority, acts with conviction, and moves forward regardless of the obstacles before it. Through such faith, ordinary individuals accomplish extraordinary feats, demonstrating that God's power operates most effectively through hearts willing to trust Him without hesitation. A legacy of bold belief is built through consistent action over time. Every choice to obey, every prayer offered with expectancy, and every step taken in alignment with God's will strengthens the foundation of this legacy. It is not defined by a single moment of courage, but by a life marked with repeated acts of trust and obedience. Those who live boldly by faith inspire others not only through words, but through the visible demonstration of God's faithfulness in their lives. Their lives communicate that miracles, breakthroughs, and transformation are possible when one chooses to believe without compromise. Bold belief also transforms communities and shapes generations. The courage of one individual to trust God can ignite hope in families, motivate peers, and influence entire communities to pursue a life of faith. It breaks cycles of doubt, fear, and mediocrity, showing that reliance on God produces results that human effort alone cannot achieve. A person who lives boldly creates a ripple effect, impacting lives far beyond their immediate surroundings, leaving a mark that echoes through time. This is the essence of a legacy, the ability to inspire, empower, and guide others toward God's truth and provision. Furthermore, a life of bold belief demonstrates resilience and perseverance. Challenges, opposition, and setbacks do not define the believer, they refine them. Bold belief strengthens character, deepens trust in God, and produces spiritual maturity. The individual becomes a living example that faith is not theoretical but practical, and that perseverance, rooted in trust, leads to lasting victory. Others observe not just the successes but also the steadfastness through trials, which becomes an enduring part of the legacy. Ultimately, a legacy of bold belief is the story of a life that embraced God's promises, acted with unwavering faith, and inspired countless others to do the same. It is a life that testifies to the power of trusting God completely, living courageously, and leaving behind a trail of transformation and hope. Such a legacy continues to speak, encourage, and empower long after the individual has passed, proving that bold belief is not only life-changing, but world-changing. Living fully in divine partnership is the ultimate expression of a life surrendered to God, where every thought, action, and decision is aligned with His will. It is a life characterized by intentionality, purpose, and trust, recognizing that human effort alone cannot achieve lasting success or fulfillment. Divine partnership means walking hand in hand with God, allowing His wisdom to guide our paths, His power to overcome our weaknesses, and His presence to sustain us through every circumstance. It is more than a spiritual concept. It is a practical daily reality that transforms ordinary living into a life of extraordinary impact. To live in divine partnership, one must cultivate a relationship of intimacy and trust with God. This relationship begins with prayer, devotion, and consistent reflection on His Word, which anchors the heart in His promises. Through this connection, believers discern His guidance, receive clarity in decision-making, and gain strength to face challenges that may seem insurmountable. Divine partnership is not passive. It requires active participation, a willingness to obey, and a readiness to align one's personal ambitions with God's purposes. When a life is surrendered in this way, every step is empowered, every effort amplified, and every challenge becomes an opportunity for God's power to be revealed. Living fully in divine partnership also brings freedom and confidence. The believer no longer fears uncertainty because they understand that they are not navigating life alone. God's presence provides direction, protection, and provision, ensuring that even in the most difficult seasons, His plans prevail. This partnership transforms perspective. Obstacles become opportunities, setbacks become lessons, and limitations become stepping stones toward fulfillment. By trusting God completely, believers experience a peace and assurance that surpass human understanding, allowing them to act boldly, pursue purpose relentlessly, and influence the world around them positively. Moreover, divine partnership empowers believers to fulfill their calling and maximize their potential. It is through this collaboration that natural talents are multiplied, spiritual gifts are activated, and opportunities that seemed unreachable become attainable. A life in partnership with God is not constrained by circumstances or human limitations. It operates in the realm of the supernatural, where divine favor, provision, and breakthrough become realities. Believers learn that their success is not measured solely by personal achievement, but by alignment with God's purposes and the impact of their lives on others. Living fully in divine partnership also encourages generosity, stewardship, and service. When God's blessings flow through a life, they are meant to be shared, not hoarded. Partnership with the Creator teaches believers to uplift others, contribute to communities, and be channels of blessing, ensuring that abundance benefits more than just oneself. This holistic approach to life reflects the fullness of God's design, creating a ripple effect of transformation, hope, and prosperity in every sphere of influence. Ultimately, living fully in divine partnership is a life of bold faith, unwavering trust, and intentional alignment with God's will. It is a life where fear is replaced by confidence, limitations are overcome by divine power, and every day becomes an opportunity to demonstrate God's goodness. Those who embrace this partnership experience a life of abundance, purpose, and victory, leaving a testimony that inspires others to surrender, trust, and walk boldly alongside the Creator. Divine partnership is the key to unlocking the fullness of life, the catalyst for miracles, and the foundation of a legacy that reflects God's glory in every dimension.